Consider this. 100% of owners will leave their business one day, but few are prepared. Are you? Don't worry, you're in the right place with this podcast, Succession Stories. Host Laurie Barkman, the Business Transition Sherpa, guides you from transition to transaction, from building value in your business to letting go. Laurie is a business transition and M&A advisor, specializing in growth, acquisitions, and selling owner-led companies. She's also the author of the Business Transition Handbook. Get your copy and learn how to avoid succession pitfalls and create valuable exit options. Sign up for a business transition newsletter at successionstories.com. Show us the love by subscribing to the show and posting a review. We appreciate you. Now, here's this week's Succession Stories with Laurie Barkman.
When is the right time to transition your business? Bill Spohn, president and owner of TruTech Tools, plans to retire in 3 years. TruTech Tools is an award-winning e-commerce reseller of tools and test instruments for HVAC and building performance professionals. Over the past 14 years, the company has grown to a $25 million revenue business with 25 employees. Bill is a self-proclaimed technical nerd who geeks out on HVAC diagnostic tools, indoor air quality, and net zero high-performance homes. His podcast, Building HVAC Science, is a great show to check out if you're in the HVAC space or generally curious about how to improve energy efficiency and consumption. I share this bit of Bill's portfolio with you because it's part of his transition story. He's creating a portfolio of business opportunities and ways to pursue his career passions outside of his core business. I guarantee you that in 3 years, Bill will be excited to jump to the next phase of his career. How is Bill approaching his transition? He's working on making the company less dependent on him by adding capable leaders and documenting workflows. He's keeping a notebook of ideas, learning from shows like this one, and diving into books, including the Business Transition Handbook. By the way, there's a link in the show notes if you want to get your copy. Enjoy this Succession Stories episode about what you will do after you leave the business with Bill Spohn. Bill Spohn, welcome to Succession Stories. This is going to be a great episode. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Laurie. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
You're a podcaster also, and you have a wonderful show where just your voice is so welcoming. And I love in your bio on LinkedIn that you say, people say about you that you're a nice guy.
Right.
I think they're going to hear that today on our discussion. And, some of the other things that I think are going to come up in conversation today is having a forward look about succession. Most of the time, people that come on the show, we're talking in the rear view. Mm-hmm. And with you and me, what I appreciate about your openness and willingness to come on the show and talk about how you're thinking about your next chapter. But I thought to start, let's talk about the here and now. You're an entrepreneur. You've built a successful business. Tell me your story.
Sure. At a young age, I wanted to be involved with science and education, teaching. I wanted to be an editor of Popular Science magazine. That was way back when I was like 15, 16 years old. And I think I've achieved that point now, just kind of fast forwarding, because together with a father and son who helped found the business, we started it based upon helping HVAC technicians understand how to do processes correctly, and also building performance technicians. So along the way, I didn't know I'd be in that field, but I got training degrees as a mechanical engineer. I worked for some large companies like Kodak and Fisher Scientific, then from some smaller companies like Bacharach and Testo. And that's where I got my introduction into the world of HVAC. And as an engineer, I got to work on some projects, designing some things. And I had a good way of explaining things. And the sales and marketing people liked to hear me explain things. So they kept inviting me to the sales meetings to give presentations. So I eventually became engineering manager and then director of strategic planning for a company, and then just started building a network. And I call myself a chronic volunteer because I join a lot of committees, standards committees, just ad hoc things that come up, and just have always felt the benefit of receiving in multiples from what I give.
That's wonderful. You give good knowledge to the world and it comes back to you.
Yeah.
You're technical, right? We can understand that from your description,
Mhm.
but you put things in a way people can understand, and that's really important. So I'm not surprised that the salespeople kept coming back to you, because that's not an easy thing to do. What made you decide to launch your company, TruTech?
I always wanted to own my own business. I think from that same time as a teenager, but just didn't quite understand it. The resources like you have today weren't available, but I just kept sort of like watching the landscape in front of me. And then my wife and I decided, when I'd actually helped TruTech Tools start as an advisor for the first year and a half. And then after it started to rapidly grow, it was like, yeah, these ideas are working now. So I bought into the company, and then eventually bought out the other owners with a business partner of mine. So I now own almost 90% of the company.
Wow, that's amazing. And how long have you been the primary shareholder?
Since 2014.
Okay, pretty significant amount of time.
Yeah.
And tell us about the business.
Sure. So it's called TruTech Tools, true without the E, because I like the way true, tech, and tools stack on each other like 3, 4, 5, a Pythagorean triangle. That's just the nerd in me coming out, which will probably come out more during this episode too. So the company was founded based upon correct processes as well as the correct tools. And we actually, Jim Bergman and I and his dad worked together for about 5 years, and had understood there was a niche that was not being covered. We actually worked for a company that designed and engineered these tools, and it was really hard to sell them through traditional bricks and mortar distribution, because in this field, the bricks and mortar maybe sells 1 to 5% of their overall volume are these products. So it was sort of like the leftovers. So we built a national business of leftovers, which
that is amazing. The niches are in the niches are in the niches, is what the saying is.
Yeah. Started it out first year, the partial year, about 8 months, the sales were 70,000. Second year, 750,000. Third year, 2.4 million. And it's just continued to go up from that.
And today, how big is the company?
We finished last year at 25.1 million.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So this is an e-commerce business. It's a reseller, and you have a catalog of tools that are niche tools, and you're selling to the HVAC industry. So you're a builder, right? You've built this business.
Yeah.
And,
the BOSI.
and you have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
But can you share your age or your stage of life and kind of what you're thinking about and what brought us together?
Sure. So I turned 64 this summer, just in a couple months. And at this stage, I'm looking to retire. And I've stated that to friends and colleagues in the business, just so it can be more, because I've read horror stories about it being, abrupt for whatever reason. So I'm putting my thoughts out there into the world of what I'd like to see happen. And that would include retiring May of 2026. So I started a little notebook of things that I'd like to see accomplished with the business in the interceding 3 years, and put in plan a place. It's not on paper yet, but that's the next thing. This summer, I think I'll finish the summer with a plan in paper, with my co-owner taking over the reins. And then I have a son who's in the business too on our leadership team. And after my co-owner is ready to retire, my son would then take over.
I know a good book that can help you.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, The Business Transition Handbook: How to Avoid Succession Pitfalls and Create Valuable Exit Options. Business owners will learn how to navigate the emotional and practical nature of the transition process to avoid exit regrets. It's crucial to start planning when time is on your side, so you don't leave money or your happiness on the table. Reading this book, you'll have Laurie Barkman, the Business Transition Sherpa, guiding you along the way. To download a free copy, head to thebusinesstransitionhandbook.com. That's thebusinesstransitionhandbook.com today.
Well, we were talking yesterday, and I know you had picked up a copy of my book.
Yep.
But all jokes aside, I mean, that is the intention of the book, is to help business owners who are thinking through their transition proactively. And that's why I wanted to talk about this with you. And of course, give you props for doing the hard work of the hard work. One of my clients said, it's harder to plan my exit than it is to build my company. And like you, he's owned it for, decades. And I appreciated that he said that. I think it's a very honest thing to say. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions. You've shared with your stakeholders, your family, your friends, your network at work, of course, your intention to retire in 3 years. What did it feel like leading up to that moment to actually communicate it? And then what did it feel like once it was out there for you?
It felt scary to communicate it. It was just like, do I really want to say this? Do I have to commit to it? But reading like things that you talk about in your podcast and you write, every business owner has to exit the business. It's just the way of the world. So why not do it in like at least lay out a plan with some contingencies? Then that was actually settling. And I found as I get older that it's just easier to politely convey the truth about what's on your mind, and that usually gets to, if there is a tough part about it, either tough emotionally or tough with people understanding it, you get to that sooner rather than later, and rely upon what you've built and the strength of the relationship, that a few statements here or there are not going to sever the cords of a relationship. That's
right. What did it feel like once you put it out in the world? Did you feel a relief?
Yeah, I did. And now it's actually kind of fun. My team members have noticed, like the last all hands meeting we have, state of the company meeting, the leadership team said, you didn't do a lot of talking. I'm like, nope, not supposed to, just supposed to watch and observe. I will do some, but it's really the team that's going to lead this company forward. And I want to take the training wheels off and have you do it your way.
So let's talk about this little notebook that you've got. In the notebook, how are you thinking about the challenges and opportunities of your transition?
Well, I actually have two sections in it. One is what I think the company needs, and then another section of what I think I need. And again, this is kind of like following the script that you and others put out there, but I've watched other people become really successful at business by making their own blend of patterns of research and learning. And it's just like, you can literally check the boxes as you run through these things. So some of the things in the business side, the business ready, is to take a step back and to look at how things are running. Do we have a good leadership team? Do we have good processes? Something as an engineer that's always been near and dear to my heart. And in the process of looking at that, even a couple of years ago, well, actually it goes back to 2017 when I first read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and then did that little survey in the front of the book where they ask, 25, 30 questions, and then you grade yourself, and then looked at the score and go, ugh. There's work to be done. And then actually stole a couple of ideas from the book without saying where they were from, and started implementing them at the company. And then when we got around to like the spring of 22, I said, I want to try this thing out. And then I went around to everyone on the leadership team and talked to them individually, asked them to read a few things, look at things with me. And they indicated, wait, this isn't much different than what we're doing right now. I'm like, oh, great, the hack worked.
You planted the seed and it worked.
Made an on-ramp. And then we engaged with a consultant, an implementer who is still helping us. We're almost 1 year into it now, but I think it's been embraced, and it's checking the boxes that I wanted to see, where we understand how our business runs and have a lot of tools at our disposal to make it run better.
That's great. Yeah. Step one is making sure that your business can thrive without you.
Right.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to step out and do these other things. So enabling your management team, enabling the organization to have systems and processes, that's really important. And let's just say, if you were thinking about the value of the business and what would make it more or less valuable to a buyer, this is one of those things. I just had a call yesterday with a woman who owns a business about $1 million in revenue. So not a huge company. The company is somewhat reliant on her, but we talked about that what is the number one thing a buyer's going to look for? Can the business thrive without its owner? And then of course, there's all kinds of detail underneath that. But step one, and that's what you're focused on, which is really smart. And I'm glad to hear that EOS is helping. I've heard that we've had EOS implementers on my show, a number of them, and I'm very familiar with EOS, and it can be very effective for companies. And I don't have any data, but if anyone has a study out there, reach out to me, because I am interested to know if there is a data connection between companies that are EOS and their valuations. I think inherently, I would guess that there is a correlation because you're going to be a more well-run company. So intuitively, but I don't know if there's any data sets out there.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So tell me what else is in that little notebook there. I'm curious.
Sure. Part of it was my technical background and my, the training aspect I bring to the company. And, for a while there was always like, initially when Jim was with the company, the questions would come back to Jim and Bill, and then Jim exited the company, and then the questions would come to Bill. And it's like, who's going to fill my role? So I was in the process of attending a conference. I'm traveling on the way there, and it just struck me, I need to find the technical nerds side of Bill needs to be replaced too at the company, because that is one of the poles of success that we have. So I thought of a couple people, contacted them, and we started working with one guy last summer. And actually, tomorrow is his first day full time. So he actually had he was a consultant. He was ramping down some contracts. So tomorrow is his first full day. I'll say his name, Eric Kaiser. He's if you go to his LinkedIn profile, he is. I think he says the nerd of HVAC, everything about that. So he is, exactly what we needed. Also someone younger than me, so that he could, continue on with the company. And he's super excited. We're super excited. We've been doing projects together, and now it'll be full-time starting tomorrow. So that was one big check mark we needed. We also needed someone, a real solid person with experience in operations. And through having to terminate someone, we did a search and found someone who was just perfect for the role, and she's working out fantastic, Sue Birch, and she's just just tearing it up. And she's only been with us since the first part of February, the last part of January, and just getting a lot of things ticked off the list. She thinks the way we do and loves the EOS system. Had never had experience with it, but was familiar with the concepts. It's a sort of good, solid. I consider EOS like it's like an encyclopedia of business concepts that's been rolled together. Someone else has done the research and put together a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, you open the box and take out what you need. For sure. It's a great toolbox. And what's interesting here, I just want to point out. So you said, I'm going to retire in 3 years. You're not waiting to month, 33 out of 36 to hire these people. You're saying, what role do I occupy today? How do I think about my roles, and how might I disperse that and hire in some talent, and then have the time to work with them while you're still very active in the business? So I just want to underscore that in case anyone's missing that point, that you're not waiting to the last minute to hire these people.
Yeah. And sort of learn about them, learn from them, and they learn from me, how things should be run, how we think things should be run, and maybe play with new ideas in that interim period, and then feel comfortable so that, upon exit, it's not like, whoa, what's that?
So having a business that's not so dependent on its owner is the main theme here, and putting some good processes in place. There's some ebook resources that I have, one of which I'll put in the show notes about creating SOPs or standardized operating procedures. If anyone wants that resource, it could be helpful for you. Feel free to grab it there.
I was going to say another couple more things is my co-owner, Eric Preston, he's been with me since just right after I became full-time with the company in 2009. He joined in that summer, and he's just been very loyal, very faithful, understanding things, adapting things, becoming a real, an engine of moving the business forward. And he'll be the one taking over, is our intention, when I retire, so that, he's got to be comfortable with sort of like his strong points and the points where he needs help. So that's what I'm trying to be sensitive to that too, to build something. So like that's part of the technical nerd we had to hire, because Eric had me. We need somebody for Eric, whose name is also Eric.
Just so it's not confusing. Yeah. Well, let's talk about you, because so many owners, I think, are hesitant to really dive into their next, right? They like what they do, or they're just so tied to it. It's their daily habit, and they can't see themselves separating from it, or they won't admit to seeing themselves separate. They won't let themselves go there. Mm-hmm. But for you, you're creating a vision and already taking action on what you will do after you leave.
Yep. And
I was wondering if you would share some of that with us.
Sure. So one thing I've done is technical consulting, actually since 2006. So I've done some of that, and also some of it's technical consulting, expert witness work. Some of it is training, doing contract training, that kind of thing. So that's sort of already been in my pocket for a while. I don't really advertise it, so it's just more of what I want to do with it. Some of the other things, I actually got invited to join a fiduciary board for one of our vendors. And actually the first interview is later today.
Well, good luck with that.
Thanks. But they're looking to change from mainly like friends and family on the board to outsiders. So they're going through sort of a step change, and I'm the first one of the step change for them.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So it's
a startup board for a non-startup company. Right.
And speaking of startups, in the last year, I just through my network, a startup company found me, a software company that's looking to build a product. The product's called Duckling. The website's getduckling.com. And what we're building now, along with design partners, is a back end, a software as a service for contractors to help homeowners electrify their homes. We see there's a big there's a lot of work to do to coordinate these various aspects, and it appears like the HVAC contractor is the best one situated to do that for homeowners, because they already do much of this work. So we're building a system where they can educate their customers, coordinate projects, deliver proposals, sort of like do the kitchen table close very rapidly, very securely, with all the aspects of electrification, from solar to heat pumps to EV chargers to heat pump water heaters, just everything you can think of. And that's pretty exciting, because that's got me really engaged, because it's a new way of thinking, to work with people who are from the tech world, who've worked at Uber and LinkedIn and Facebook, and just some of the jargon, really becoming a student of that. So that's got my juices flowing there. And I'm doing it now as a part-time advisor, but would look to continue with them or do it again with someone else, because it's so interesting to me.
I like the portfolio approach. That's what I call it. It's not just one thing. Yeah. You have several things. They do tie together nicely, because they're leveraging your skill set. They're leveraging what you're passionate about. And you used the word earlier, Bill. You said the word on-ramp.
Yeah.
And this is not taking over your full-time. Your full-time is still at TruTech Tools.
Right.
But it is giving you a mechanism to grow. And you're going to be excited, right? When that time comes, it's going to be emotional. There's no doubt about it. But by the time 3 years rolls around, everybody in your organization is probably like, hey, Bill, we got it. Bye. Right. We love you, but okay, we got it. And you likewise will probably feel the same. You guys got it. I'm good. I'm on my way. And that's awesome. That's what we find in our data and our resources, is that the more what we call pull factors, the more pull factors you've created, pulling you to your next thing, the happier you will be, the happier your network of stakeholders will be to support you, and the outcomes will be better. And I'm so excited for you. There's also on the personal side with your
Mhm.
house, you
Yeah.
probably should mention this very cool thing with net zero. I want to say it the right way. It's
Yeah.
net
Net
zero
zero energy.
impact. You're a net zero enthusiast.
Yeah. Yeah. So when Marilyn, my wife, and I decided we had to figure out what we're going to do in retirement, we actually started thinking about this back in 2014. So we sold a big house where we raised our kids, moved to a smaller house, and then began the planning process of like where geographically, and then what and when. And we set a timeline of about 5 years, and it was about 6 years that we had solidified that we bought a piece of property near one of the county parks in Pittsburgh, near Hartwood Acres. Bought 3 acres and decided to build a high performance home. Originally something called a passive house, but that concept was a little too extreme for our budget. So we backed it up and made what a lot of people, it's actually a book called A Pretty Good House, written by some friends of mine from Maine. And I have a couple of photos in there in that book and some other books because we're doing some unique things. So the house was actually built in a factory. So it's modular construction in Strattonville, PA, just a little bit north of here near Clarion. And we found a builder who understood what we wanted, built-in features that we like. And our goal was to make it use solar on the property to provide all the energy needs of the house. So we didn't even run a gas line up. Because of the area, we had to put in a well and septic just because of the geography around here. As you know, from being around Pittsburgh, you hear about that a lot. And it all came together. So we're living in it now. It'll be 2.5 years. And I've tracked the energy consumption. So everything in the house runs off electricity. The stove, induction cooktop, a heat pump clothes dryer, heat pump water heater, all these things. The heat pump, just really quick technology minute here, moves energy. It doesn't actually transform energy. Like a fossil fuel, you actually have to combust to create thermal energy. A heat pump can move heat energy from one place to another. If you think of your air conditioner, that's actually a heat pump. If you could throw it into reverse gear, instead of cooling, you can also make it heat. So that's what we have. And we've used our heat pump down to -9 degrees Fahrenheit in the recent winter. And had it was chilly for a couple of days, but it's worked out well for us. So that's another thing I'm enthusiastic about. It it melds my worlds of building performance and HVAC, and now with a project that I'm worked on myself. So I'm teaming up with our local solar installer, Invinity, and I'm doing public presentations on the concept of solar and home performance. I also did one for a recent congregation on Earth Day, and just shared my knowledge. And that's that's another pull factor is I want to take what I know and go back to that high school kid who wanted to be the Popular Science magazine editor and teach people what I know in an approachable style and a trustworthy style. Also, I have no financial interest in it. It's just what I think is good stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And there's Bill Nye, the science guy, right?
Yeah.
Bill Spohn,
Home performance guy.
Home performance. Yeah, it's like a whole new category.
Yeah.
You've been on the news a few times and media spotlights on the work you're doing, which is really incredible. I love how you're tying it all together. If you are gonna now give some thoughts and advice to our audience, people listening who might be in your shoes, thinking about their future, what words of wisdom do you want to leave for them? What are 1, 2, or 3 things you want to give as words of advice?
Relax, find some quiet time, however you do that, where you can kind of get into your own head and think about things. Think, like a lot of things, just think horizontally and vertically about where you've come from, where you've been, what's excited and interests you, and start to make your own notebook, and reflect on it and see what you want to do. It's like, I don't know, things have accumulated to the point where I can say, yeah, I think I've got most of it together. But a couple of years ago, I didn't really know what was going on. So you have to start. Step 1 is always important.
Yeah, get started. To ask the question a little more specifically, when should owners start transition planning?
They always say, yesterday is the best day. I would say, around 5 years out, you got to start experimenting with the thoughts, and start to talk about it openly with other people. I found giving a presentation helps me learn the subject matter. So if the subject matter is me, I'm going to give a little presentation on me and my business, and then reflect on the questions I get, the reactions I get, and just sort of what bubbles forth in your mind. When you have to explain it to someone, it comes out a little different every time, and take note of that.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and sharing your journey and where you're headed. And maybe we'll have you come back on, I'm sure, certainly in 3 years, but
Sure.
even before that, to talk about your progress. And I want to give people a way to get in touch with you. If you want to share some of your digits or emails, or what's a great way to get in touch?
Sure. So Bill at TruTechTools.com, TruTechTools.com. I also, if you want to follow some of the things we talked about on my house project, it's spohnhome.com, SPOHNHOME.com. There's also a private Facebook group if you want to join it. I take polite members to my group. I think it's up around 700 people now. I post just little things that entertain me about the house and energy savings, energy consumption, things with the sun, solar energy and stuff. Those are some of the best ways. And then TruTech Tools, my business, we sell mostly to contractors. We do have a few products for homeowners, mainly low-level carbon monoxide alarms, which are hard to find, or actually almost impossible to find. But they give an early warning. That's where I do my expert witness work, is carbon monoxide generation.
And the podcast, in case people want to check out your show.
Sure. It's called Building HVAC Science. The play on words there is the HVACs in the middle of the building, and the building impacts the building science. I also do one for an industry group called ResNet, which is the Residential Energy Services Network, and that's called ResTalk, RESTALK. So when I started doing my own, I interviewed the director of ResNet, and they wanted to do their own podcast, and then just turned it over to me. So I'm a contractor to them. That's another thing I will continue to do, post-retirement, the podcast thing. It's an outlet for me, fulfilling.
Oh, absolutely. You're creative. And even though you're a techie nerd guy, you're very creative, and you like to put good things in the world. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us. And I expect to see multiple notebooks from you over the next couple of years.
Maybe a book.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much, Laurie.
And listeners, thank you so much for your support. Catch Succession Stories on your favorite podcast player and on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to the show. If you want to maximize the value of your business and plan for future transition, connect with me at meetlauriebarkman.com. Join me next time for more insights from transition to transaction. Until then, here's to your success. I hope that today's episode resonated with you. What actions will you take as a result? If you want to grow, sell, or transition your business, our strategic transition planning process provides clarity and objectivity on the big questions that may be weighing on your mind. Make an intention and take the next step. Set up a complimentary consultation with me to discuss your goals at thebusinesstransitionSherpa.com. That's thebusinesstransitionSherpa.com.